So we would be starting our session, which is a very interesting and exciting one. And we have two great people speaking today who are my favorites, I would say. We are going to speak on an exciting topic, which is emerging technologies, trends, and security. And I'm happy to introduce both the speakers. Sheetal Kumar, who is the head of global engagement and advocacy at Global Partners Digital. She's involved in various cybersecurity dialogues, and you can see more of our profile in our website, inSig. And we have Dr. Gulshan Rai, who actually needs no introduction, but still I would do so. Presently, he's a distinguished fellow at ORF. He's the Chief Information Security Officer at the PMO's office. He was the first National Cybersecurity Coordinator at the PMO, the Director General of CERT-IN, and he has helped draft a lot of our national policies on cybersecurity. And there is more which can be said, but I will hand it over to both of you. Sheetal, I'll go to you first, and I'd like to hear more from you as to what are the trends and cybersecurity discussions which you're looking at, and which can, shape the discourse globally. And sir, I would like to hear from you your views from the Indian perspective. So Sheetal, we go with you first, and then we come to Dr. Rai. In case you have slides, Sheetal, I have given you access. You could share that, or you could speak.
Okay, thanks so much, Amrita, and thank you for inviting me. Hopefully you can hear me. I don't have slides. I was hoping it could be a interactive discussion.
Yes,
very keen. Okay, great. Very keen to hear from you as well, everyone here. It's a pleasure to be able to join you. I hope that you had a good inSig so far. And as Amrita said, I'm the head of global engagement and advocacy at Global Partners Digital. Just to give you a little bit of background on Global Partners Digital, or GPD, we're a human rights organization that is working towards a digital environment underpinned by human rights. And cybersecurity, cyber policy is a key area of our work. And you might wonder why. What are the links that we see between human rights and cyber? And it's really twofold. First of all, as we've been hearing already, we depend on a secure digital environment, on secure digital technologies, on a secure internet in the world that we live in now, because we're so dependent on digital technologies. And if they're not secure, then we can't exercise our human rights. And the other aspect of it is that in order to ensure that we have a secure internet and secure digital technologies to be able to exercise our rights, we need rights respecting measures and policies to address the many challenges that do arise from the fact that the internet can be insecure, can create a lot of problems. So in order to address those, we need to address them with rights respecting policies and measures. So that's what we do to promote human rights in cyberspace. And what I wanted to do really is, I'm just, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll keep an eye out there. I wanted to cover two broad areas relating to cybersecurity trends and the ways that the challenges that we're facing when it comes to cybersecurity are being addressed. So one is around definitions, because definitions are so important. There's no one definition of cybersecurity. And so I just want to come on to that first. And then second, I want to look at where are these issues being discussed? How are they discussed nationally, regionally, and globally? So to begin with the definitions, we often hear, and it's true, that the internet wasn't built with security in mind necessarily. So the internet was built to share information. And it does do that very well, but it wasn't because it wasn't built with security in mind. There are lots of different areas that we need to consider when we're talking about cybersecurity. And really that's around, for example, keeping data and systems secure. And data in particular, one of the key definitions of cybersecurity that we adopt at GPD that is rights respecting is that which focuses on maintaining the integrity, the confidentiality, and the availability of information or data. Now, there are other definitions that are much broader in scope, or that, for example, refer to national security as dependent on controlling certain types of information or content. And those are heavily securitized framings that lead to, for example, policies and measures that undermine human rights and also security. And so it's really important, I think, that that's made clear, because there are definitions of cybersecurity that can undermine human rights and indeed undermine security. Come on to an example of that soon. And then there are definitions that uphold or promote human rights and that are focused on maintaining the integrity, the confidentiality, and the availability of information, as I mentioned. So some of the measures that are key to maintaining cybersecurity, and that certainly over the past few years have become better, but there are always threats, is measures like strong encryption. So strong encryption maintains the integrity and the availability of information, and it's really important. It's part of so much of the technology that we use, and other areas of, for example, policies that support a strong cybersecurity framework include ensuring a strong ICT supply chain that has security and privacy built into it by design, ensuring that there are rights respecting and clear and transparent vulnerability equity processes, so that when vulnerabilities are discovered, that they're disclosed properly and in a way that maintains the security of the internet, so that they can't be traded or used for malicious use. Vulnerabilities are just part and parcel of technology, because technology is made by human beings and human beings are not perfect. So vulnerabilities do arise and they must be properly managed. So vulnerabilities, equities, processes can support with that. Another area of policy that is really important is good data protection. So data protection frameworks are really underpinned by two key parts. So one is about imposing obligations on those that process data, those that store data. That could be a bank, that could be an app, anyone or any entity that processes data or stores it is required under data protection frameworks to ensure that that data is protected. And this is personal data I'm talking about. And then data protection frameworks, apart from imposing obligations on data processors, they also but they provide rights to data subjects, which includes like you and me. So where our personal data is used, we have rights under data protection frameworks to remedy if that data is exposed. For example, we have the right to know where it is, how it's been used, all of that. So that's also a really important measure from a cybersecurity perspective, because it incentivizes data processors to ensure that data is properly secure. So as I said, there are lots of different definitions of cybersecurity. There are some rights respecting definitions, there are those that are not. And then there are different ways that we can ensure strong cybersecurity. Now, in terms of trends, as you have heard, the COVID pandemic has meant that we're so much more reliant on the internet, but the internet also stood up to that challenge. It has also resulted, because of our increased dependence on the internet, in more malicious use of, for example, the internet, for example, cybercrime, the increased use of ransomware to target critical infrastructure. And this has resulted in attempts to address that. Like I said, you can address these problems in ways that are rights respecting, or you can address them in ways that perhaps result in an overreach of powers of the state without proper safeguards in place. And we are seeing that all across the world. So it's really important to address these challenges that have arisen from an increased dependence on the internet, but it's also really important to do that in a rights respecting way. And I'm happy to come on to that in more detail, but I just wanted to move now to the second part of the presentation, which is around where do we develop these policies? Where are these issues being discussed? But before I go on, let me see if there are any questions.
There doesn't seem to be any questions yet, Sheetal. So I guess we are waiting to hear both of you.
Okay, please don't be shy. I know that there's a lot of expertise here in the room as well, and you all know so much about the topic. And perhaps, you know, there are areas of this discussion where you might want more clarity or you have any questions. Please don't be shy and do ask them. Okay, so as we've said, lots of issues, lots of challenges, lots of things to do. So where are these issues being discussed in terms of policy? Because that's my area of expertise. In terms of policy that policymakers, governments develop, these are really discussed. I'm going to look at 3 different levels in different areas. There's so many areas of cybersecurity as we've just looked at, but there are so many different areas that they're discussed in as well. But I wanted to look at the national level, the regional level, and the global level. So to begin with, nationally, many countries have national cybersecurity strategies that provide an all-encompassing umbrella framework for the policies, the measures, the structures, the systems that a country will have to address cybersecurity. So that could include legislation. It could include, for example, it could include vulnerability equities processes being set up. It can explain what departments deal with what issues that are related to cybersecurity. So it clarifies all of that. Then, of course, there are many different types of legislation that are relevant to cybersecurity. That could be legislation that is focused on like an ICT piece of legislation. It could be around cybercrime. It could be a piece of legislation that's focused on cybersecurity in particular. There's so many different ways that governments can regulate cybersecurity. And so then at the regional level, it depends really on the region. So for example, in Europe, we have the European Union, and that's a supranational body, so it can pass legislation that's binding on all its members. There isn't any equivalent in other regions, but regional bodies like ASEAN, for example, in the Asia region, or the OAS in the Americas, they can support their member states through developing guidelines for cybersecurity policy. They can set up processes to share information on best practices. They can support their members with capacity building as well. And they can also support to implement the measures that are adopted at the global level. So I'm going to come on to that now, because there are many discussions taking place in multilateral forums, and I wanted to focus on the UN in particular, because at the UN First Committee, which is the General Assembly Committee that is focused on peace and security, they've been discussing these issues, particularly focused on state behavior in cyberspace and the obligations of states in cyberspace. So how should they behave towards one another? What is acceptable behavior? Can a state attack another state's critical infrastructure, for example? What are the red lines? All of these are very important discussions to be having, of course, because states are using ICTs to project their strategic power, to, for example, just even in states of conflict, in order to project power, as I said. So there's so many different ways that these issues intersect, but at the UN and the First Committee, they've really been looking at what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior for states to do in cyberspace. And those discussions have been happening for 20 years. And they've been happening in different ways. So first of all, the General Assembly has passed a resolution every year asking member states to provide their views to the UN Secretary General on how international law applies in cyberspace and how states should behave in cyberspace. So that's been happening. But then also they've set up groups of governmental experts. So those are closed groups of governmental experts who get together for 2 years and discuss these issues of what is acceptable and what is unacceptable behavior in cyberspace. What are the threats? What do cyber threats look like? How do you define them? And then what do you do about them? In addition, in 2018, the General Assembly set up an open-ended working group of on information security, on information technology, on ICTs. And that open-ended working group is open to all member states. So unlike the group of governmental experts that was limited to select member states who applied to be in the group, it's open. And a new open-ended working group has just been set up. So what have these groups done? So the group of governmental experts, what they have created over the last few years is a framework that we call the Responsible State Behavior Framework. And it's made up of 4 components. It's made up of cyber norms. So these are commitments that states have made to certain types of behavior. It's made up of capacity building measures. So it states that these are the different areas of cyber capacity building that are required, and these are the different principles that should underpin it. It's also composed of confidence building measures, which a bit like norms, they set out what states should do in order to build confidence and trust between themselves. For example, setting up points of contact in the government where during a time of crisis, a person can be reached. And then lastly, they've confirmed that international law applies in cyberspace and that states are bound by international law in cyberspace. But there are lots of areas of disagreement still. So there are areas of disagreement relating to, for example, whether new norms are needed or whether the existing norms that have been committed to are enough. There's areas of disagreement around what bodies of international law apply in cyberspace and how. And there's areas of disagreement about whether or not a binding treaty is required in cyberspace, or whether the framework is enough and that it just needs to be implemented. So as we enter the phase of a new open-ended working group, which is going to start its deliberations next month. Oh, and another area of disagreement is the role of stakeholders. So I was just hearing earlier about how important it is to maintain the multi-stakeholder approach to the internet and to internet governance. Well, there are some countries that don't want to see the multi-stakeholder approach strengthened in areas like the discussions that are happening at the UN First Committee. And they want to block access to NGOs and other non-governmental stakeholders. So that's another area of disagreement. So as we enter the next OEWG, these are all areas of disagreement that will shape the discussions and where the framework will be further developed, further discussed. It's really important now for us to focus on the implementation of what has already been agreed. That includes the norms. Like I said, that can happen through regional bodies who can support their member states to implement the norms. There's one norm on vulnerability equities processes, for example. There's norms on sharing information. There's a norm on human rights. There's a norm on cybercrime. There's 3 norms on critical infrastructure and protecting critical infrastructure from harm. So there's a lot to be done there, but the implementation lags behind. Another way that the norms can be implemented is through national cybersecurity strategies and national frameworks. So that's really important. So yes, I think I'll just end there to say that there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot happening. There's still areas of agreement and disagreement that continue to be discussed at the UN and elsewhere. And welcome your questions. I hope that was clear.
Yes,
But
thank
as
you,
I said,
Shikran. There were, there were a few questions. One I will direct to Dr. Rai once he finishes, but there were 2 more questions, 3. Don't you think that these law and policies should be discussed more at a bottom-up level where major groups of users can exist? Can you explain few cybersecurity policies discussed hugely recently? I think you mentioned. The other is sometimes the place and person of cyber attack occurred is difficult to find out. How cyber security norms act here, and what are the latest trends in cybersecurity, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of Digital India initiative? I think you would not be able to take the second part, but those are some, and I think Shikha also has something. If you want to reflect on them and come back, that's great. We will bring in Dr. Rai to share his perspective. How do you want to go about it?
Well, okay, I can tackle a couple of them maybe,
Okay.
and then the ones that are directly relevant to what I was discussing, and then I can reflect on the others. So the question about laws and policies being discussed from the bottom up, that's really important. And that's why it's so important to have inclusive discussions at the UN, the national level. It's important for governments when they're discussing and they're developing frameworks that they engage those who are directly affected by those policies. And of course, when it comes to the internet, because we're all users, we all have stake in how the internet develops and the policies that regulate it. It's really important that governments bring in people from the beginning. So I would say yes, definitely. And there are some good examples of that. There are some examples of governments not doing that. So can share with you some resources on that if you're interested. In terms of the question of a place and person of cyber attack, if that's about attribution, that can be difficult, but it's definitely come a long way and it's become easier to do attribution. There are different elements of attribution. So when we're talking about a cyber attack that is attributed to a state, there are political elements to consider that the state will think about their relationship with the other state, how much information they actually have about the attack that they can prove. There's many different things they will consider. What doesn't exist is an independent attribution organization. And there's a lot of discussion about whether or not that is needed in order to make sure that attribution isn't politicized. But attribution has come a long way as you see the technical capacities of those who work in incident response have increased and improved. So there is a lot that can be done there. Questions about our norms are internationally binding. The norms that have been adopted, the 11 norms by the UN General Assembly, are not binding. They are voluntary, but they over time could become binding as they are integrated into national frameworks. And there are different ones that could become adopted perhaps through a binding treaty. So it's just a question of time, really. And one of the most important things about norms is that they are implemented and talked about. So when a state violates a norm, it's important for another state, for all other states to say, you violated this, by the way, you agreed to this and you violated it. So that creates an awareness and a culture of respect for the norms. And then over time that can become binding. And then there's another question here, but yeah, I'll stop there.
Yes, you may perhaps want to also comment on what Dr. Rai says. So I'll bring you in after that. So, sir, you've been hearing Sheetal, and she's been speaking from, the rights and the policy perspective, and you looked at it from the law enforcement perspective. So we'd like to have your views and from the Indian perspective, of course. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Amrita. It's always a pleasure to be on the panel, which is organized by you, steered by you, moderated by you, and what a pleasure to listen our young friend Sheetal on many of the important issues. So I profusely thank you for inviting me to this panel, introducing me to a young expert and the other people, other audience who are listening to me or who they will interact with me during the chat, through the chat process there. I certainly would like to start with thanking my young friend, younger Sheetal, for such a beautiful articulation of the issues which she mentioned out. Now, I will start with I will begin from there. These issues are being discussed right from the year 2001. I remember there, and I will come on the issues subsequently. But today is 21. In the last 20-year journey of our digital journey, the issues have become much more complex. We are truly in the digital transformation, I would say, as the fashion should say. We are in a version 4.0. That's a version we talk about it. Why we are saying 4.0? Because it's a accepted kind of a word nomenclature, Industry 4.0. So Industry 4.0, which is now Digital 4.0, this is the word which we are. The components of this Digital 4.0 are much more different. Whether we look at the technology, look at the policy, look at the regulation, look at the geopolitical kind of a consideration, all issues have become totally different. And Amrita, you have been tracking, you are one of the great, a person with a great service tracking the internet since the time I know you, which is more than now, more than a quarter century. That's what I can say that. So the issues have become, the way the technology has become a complex, issues have also become very, very complex. Today we are operating in an environment which is global, which is local also, and it's a unique mix-up of the local as well as global. I don't think any country in the world can say they could have a kind of with their issues which are different than, which are altogether different than the issues, whether it's economic or a security or any kind of a thing, different from the world issue there. There is a unique mix-up. There's a unique interfacing of the issues, global as well as the local issues are there. And it's relevant to security because today we are all linked on the internet. No matter whichever corner of the country we are sitting, whichever application we are talking about it, we are linked on the internet there. And if you see at one point of a time, I remember those days I used to fight with the Department of Telecommunication. They were all, the gateways were monopolized by the BSNL, and I had fought with him. This is as early as in year 2000, 2001, to decentralize it, demonopolize it, and give the gateways to other people also. What was the international bandwidth? 4 gigabit. That was the international bandwidth going out there. Today, look at the traffic. The international traffic is higher than the domestic traffic. That's the scenario today. And going on hundreds of gigabit traffic. I mean, I don't want to give the exact figure because of the many other reasons, but hundreds of gigabit of traffic going on. And we have how many gateways? We have almost every submarine cable, international cable, which is crossing the different continents, is touching the India. That's the scenario there. So that's why I said the situation has become altogether different. Transformation is altogether different. And we all hear this transformation has the basic component, underlying component of the transformations are, and the famous jargon, the artificial intelligence, big data, cloud, big analytics there. And most important,
Sir, you are muted.
sorry.
Yes.
Oh, so let me repeat once again, all kind of a thing.
No, just the last line we missed you.
But I was open all along.
We could hear you till now,
Okay.
just the last
Okay.
line.
So I'm saying that, I mean, the every submarine cable now it's landing. The situation in the cyber is now become complex. No matter wherever you are sitting in any corner of the country, you are connected on the internet. And I was giving an example of telecommunication. In 2000, 2001, everything was monopolized with the BSNL, in those days BSNL. Now, every submarine cable gateway is landing at India. The international traffic is much, much higher, hundreds of gigabits higher than the domestic traffic. That's a scenario there. The components of this transformation are different than what we have seen, and the jargons we normally talk about it. The artificial intelligence, big data, cloud, analytics, the Internet of Things, robotic automation, and most important is cybersecurity. The cybersecurity has become much more important issues there because we are linking, interfacing, connecting the heterogeneous element together on the internet there. And as Sheetal said in the opening statement, say that it is often said that internet was not created as a secure kind of a network or a communication network or the architecture. No doubt, things have improved over a period of time, but we are all connecting on a heterogeneous devices on a common platform like the internet there. What we are going to see in a matter of 2 years in India, we are going to see that we are going to migrate on the 5G communication, or let me say the next generation communication. So when we say next generation communication, 5G is not only that when I make a call to you, I'm using the 5G kind of a technology. My home Wi-Fi also will be a 5G kind of a thing. Every office LAN will be a 5G kind of a thing there. So I would rather say 5G. I would talk about the next generation communication technology. It's going to link all of us together on a high-speed channel. High-speed channel. Now, if you look at the 5G next generation communication itself, the issues, the architecture of the communication itself is a different. We are going to operate 5G and onward. They are purely internet, TCP/IP, internet protocol kind of environments are there. So the telecommunication, which was a different kind of a platform with respect to the cybersecurity issue, is going to add the issues, making the issues of complex, cybersecurity issue complex, because that itself is going to be internet kind of a thing. At my home, at my phone, everywhere is going to be the next generation communication, a seamless connectivity on which my computer, my laptop, my phone, medical equipment, hospitals, lathe machines, you talk about anything, they'll all be linked together. More than that, the whole thing is going to be connected on the cloud. There will be a lot of heterogeneous interfaces will be there. A lot of embedded circuits, a lot of IoT will be there from end to end, from my phone to another phone. This communication, a lot of IoT devices will happen there. So the complication, the complexity which is going to come up, and the underlying technologies, which is the 5 or 6 components I made it, and getting encrypted there. Those things are becoming very, very important issues in India and elsewhere else. And as I said, India issues will be same. Now, how does it make these cybersecurity issues very complex? It's going to make issues very complex, and certainly those issues also, what Sheetal has very nicely articulated the issues in her presentation there. Now, if you look at the incident, kind of a nature of incident which are happening, all of you would know the incident which has happened in the last couple of 6 months. A cloud of all applications are moving to the cloud. Slowly, everyone is moving. Jargon is that everybody you say, why don't you move on a cloud? Why don't you move on a cloud? And there are a couple of clouds which are operating worldwide. Those are operating in India also. But what happened in the incident last year in 2020? I'm talking about the incident from 2020 onward till today. Major incident happened. One of the famous cloud, international cloud, getting compromised. As a result, the software applications like MS Office, Exchange Server, they were compromised. Now look at the world over. The cloud is serving the entire lot of, different parts of the world, different kind of application. Your Microsoft Exchange Server getting compromised, your Microsoft background getting compromised there. That means you are compromised in a computer system. What havoc it can create, what data it can take away, what can it create? You can launch a ransomware attack simultaneously from billions of system, and stopping and checking, mitigating, it becomes very, very complex there. That was by and large, it was a compromise of some of the machines there. But imagine you augment the kind of attacks through the AI and big data. It will be very, very challenging thing what we will see in the time to come because of this digital transformation there. You can stop your lathe machine that, because every equipment which will be connected on the internet will have an operating system there. Will have an operating system, and we are more moving towards the open standards there. So, you can see that people may say, Android, I'm using the iOS or I'm using the Windows system. No, some components underlying some of the modules in all the operating systems are more or less similar there. Kernel may be different from some. A lot of corporates are similar. They take from each other, pay royalty each other, do that. The second incident, if you look at the US pipeline, where the eastern part of the US, large part of the US was in a problem. This state emergency was declared in that part. And huge loss, huge kind of a thing. Flights came to a standstill. The gasoline was an issue aspect there. That's another kind of a scenario there. And this whole scenario is because we are all interconnected today, or a heterogeneous element. Anyone sitting in any corner of the world, they start playing the things and it becomes a worse for others. This scenario is going to be very, very complex. And if you look at the data last, I would say January from to till today, till November 20th or so, there, see the number of incidents, a huge benefit of the has increased tremendously. The focus has been to take away the personal information. The health sector has not been spared. They have been attacked. Critical sector have been attacked there. Transportation have been attacked. Industries have been attacked. Telecommunication has been attacked. Not a single sector has come up which has not been attacked, and the data is not stolen there. Today, it's not an issue of something that someone is attacking for the fun. They are all geopolitical issues also there. First, they are hackers, they are perpetrators, which operates on an individual basis. The second aspect is that the perpetrators and hackers, they are operate on behalf of the state actors there. The incident which I talked, they are operating on behalf of the state actor. But today there is a unique combination between the state actor and a non-state actor. So the cybersecurity issue is becoming a more complex there. Now, what trend is moving there? We are moving certainly, definitely on a cloud kind of a platform. We are moving towards a microservices environment when it comes to the future language, future programming there. Microservices, micro application, everything is becoming app-based kind of a thing. Again, heterogeneous interfacing there. Number of interfaces, more vulnerabilities. Implementing a uniform process, which Sheetal was talking about it, or some of the questions may come up there, is going to be more and more challenging. So we are in a really moving, in a situation in which needs require urgent attention, and that too, collective attention will be required there. Now, I'll give you, Sheetal was talking about humanitarian aspect there. And I think, Amrita, you know very well, the International Red Cross is struggling. For last so many years, it's going to be a decade. If attack happens, if a cloud is attacked there, hospital is also drawing service from the attack there. And if the cloud sits down, the attack happens, the Exchange server or the MS Office example, I said it. Or I said the US pipeline also there. If a hospital sits down at the time of a war, at time of emergency, or let us say in time of the pandemic, some hospital is attacked there. What happened? There was an incident which has come out openly recently. There was a young girl, who was taken to the hospital in a country. I don't want to name the country. Neither the hospital nor the patient knew that the hospital is under ransomware attack. The hospital was under ransomware attack, and the girl died there. And I can quote a number of examples to many examples towards that there. Now, the more we are moving towards a technological innovation, more we are facing the challenges, security challenges, more we are finding the collective solution to this is most eluding there, is going away from. Imagine the humanitarian issues in a scenario when hospitals are attacked on a ransomware, and there are more than 10,000 ransomware kind of attacks, highly sophisticated attacks in India also. I'm talking about in India. Asking for a Bitcoin, asking for a virtual currency. How do you handle those kind of things there? The Sheetal said, and Amrita also said that We are in 2001 negotiating the norms of behavior. I participated till 2017. After that, 1 year there was nothing. This year I am hearing something is observing there. But note that there is not a single norms of behavior we are talking about, that we will not attack systems which are for humanitarian purposes. There means the hospitals will not attack. There is no single solution. And we come to the ICANN. ICANN has not given solution. And I have seen the report, 2012 report, where the International Olympics, the Red Cross or such organization have requested there. They have not found a solution there. How to stop, how to prevent, how to, check the attacks on such organization, medical, which are used for humanitarian purposes, or a critical sector, maybe a power sector there. Power sector, somebody, a enemy may like to demolish, change it. But there could be many other sectors which are purely the pharmaceutical sector, which are purely water grid or the electricity grid. They are purely kind of humanitarian elements are there. And they employ one of the best technology which is there. ICANN has not come back with a solution. Simply saying, we cannot say that that's because, when I joined this session, my earlier speaker, who was moderating, he talked about we are operating in a distributed kind of a structure. We can't have a single DNS. We have to be distributed DNS there. Fine. But we need to look at the solution which we need to do for the international humanitarian or the for India purposes. That we need to look at those issues also. While we may have a distributed structure, we need to implement security policies accordingly. We do that. Now, if you look at the India, because Amrita wanted me to focus on India, we have the National Cybersecurity Policy 2013, and the government is trying to revise and looking to the current and technological innovation. I'm sure they will come back. They're coming out with a policy which is quite progressive and front-end policy. But if you look at the implementation, the country is far away. There are issues in terms of the implementation. There are issues, the innovations are also adding some complication to implementation of the policy. Not more than 30% of the organizations in the country have a proper CISO there. Most of the institutions, the CISO and CIO role is combined together. There's a confusion. What is the role of CISO? What is the role of CIO? What is the role of other operation bodies there? That's one. The budget of the institutions are very, very low. They are not able to keep out a separate budget. When you come to auditing there, yes, I started a process of the empanelment of auditor there. It is still going on. It has helped the users in the country to do that. But then enforcing standards among those auditors and relying is itself becoming an issue. Issue is becoming more because the capacity building is a very, very poor kind of a factor there. And that is one singular factor which is responsible for our concerns in the area of securing the infrastructure or talking about cyber security. At some time, I worry, how do we handle the kind of things I've been talking about, innovations which are happening there. Today morning, I was in a seminar on the crypto, because today is becoming a very hot subject, crypto. Last week, the standing committee has a meeting. All rumors are there. The government is going to put a bill. All media is talking about. Everyone is talking about now blocking or not blocking. That's the issue, debating it. But when I asked today, fine, let us talk about the blocking and non-blocking. There's one aspect. If you block it, yes, there is nothing to do that. But if you don't block it, the way general opinion is emerging there, how do you ensure robustness, stability, and the integrity of the infrastructure? There were reports, and all of you have read it. $600 million was the Bitcoin was stolen in exchange. 12 exchanges are operating in India. What is the state of the security? Whatever we are trying to do, are we able to secure the infrastructure? Is the security adequate? Is the security enough? That's the part. When I look at it, do we have appropriate kind of a regulation or process to safeguard or to guide the people? That's another. Third, do we have appropriate manpower to understand the issues in a different domains and protect them? There's a third issue there. So, I mean, when I look at it, I mean, a person like me who has worked in the government for all along so many years there, I get perplexed and I get like a mind-boggling kind of a thing comes up to me because I have the exposure to all those issues there. But when I can see that only single ray of light comes to me, that the situation when the technology is progressing, we are getting many technological answers, technological kind of solutions there. We'll be implementing those solutions there. But what more important is that the transparency in the system, the private sector role has to play. Sheetal was talking about a multi-stakeholder. Someone talked about it's not a multilateral, it's a multi-stakeholder. So collective responsibility has been given. The multitasking kind of a thing, multi-stakeholder is a collective responsibility we are talking about it. And that is where we need to take a collective responsibility. My system is connected to your system. My responsibility of securing the system is to the point where it connects to you. Whether it connects to the public network or private network, my responsibility, I must be responsible for what on my control is. Someone else has to look after the control on their part. And for this, we must collectively put forward the policies and regulations. And I can tell you, having experience in the government, the consultation, private sector has to come forward and put it there, looking a general aspect, not that something has to suit me, my interest, that I should promote that kind of a culture. Certainly not there. There is a lack of experience, lack of wisdom, lack of understanding of the new technological evolution or the innovation which are happening. And so we all have to collectively come together to help the government in putting the governance structure aspect. We put the governance structure to do that, to secure our system. Technology is one thing, we cannot leave it now. We have to adopt the technology, we have to follow the technology, there is no way. So we need to find a solution, and the solution can be found if we work collectively and if we are in touch with each other. With this, such more seminars need to be arranged where people should come, present their case studies, discuss it, how they have implemented, how they have solved it. And I look forward, from my friend Amrita, such kind of a seminars more where the issues are discussed threadbare so that the people are aware of what kind of solutions everyone has implemented and they can also look at it. With this, I thank Amrita for giving me enough opportunity for speaking. Sir. I don't know whether I have short time, over short time, but
no. Thank you, sir.
I will be able to answer any question which you may ask me.
Yes, thank you, sir. So if you have any questions for Dr. Rai or Sheetal, you can raise your hands. Sheetal, if you want to, there was a question, sir, and Sheetal, if you would like to comment on anything Dr. Rai said or last questions. But there was a question on Indian laws, which says that India does not have a state-specific cybersecurity law or regulation. However, we do have it, but several state governments have taken initiatives to promote cybersecurity. Why is it? And why is there no national standard to these laws and regulations? And the other question, which was related to yes, sir. So would you like to, and what are the advantages and what are the latest trends in cybersecurity? So you've answered that, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of the Digital India initiative? I don't know whether you want to comment on it, but these are the India-specific questions till now.
No, I will come. I mean, you asked me to comment on any question. I will certainly comment on the question. I don't want to deny the audience the right to answer. Maybe that's also part of the awareness program. We should answer. There could be a myth. There could be a lack of clarity or gaps. I think it's my duty to also bring them. But I leave it to you whether you are asking me to answer first or you're asking a young friend to answer the
No,
question.
you can respond to the Indian part, and then we'll bring in Sheetal.
Okay. Okay. Now, thanks very much. I don't know the name of the audience who has asked this question, participant, but I must say that the government has a national cybersecurity policy, 2013. As I said, it's under revision there, and looking to revise to look into the current trend, the technological innovation, and the security trends and the application, which some of which I have discussed in my presentation there. Every state, there is a law in the country. If you look at it, the Information Technology Act, Section 43A, every organization, every body corporates which collects the personal data is required to implement a best security practices there. And the best security practices, one of the security practices which has been mandated under the law is the ISO 27001, is an international standard which the country has adopted. A standard which the country has adopted, it will get adopted by the states also. And I must say that the state data centers or all the state government have been and are implementing, even the public-private units are also implementing that kind of a standard. But that is not the only standard there. The government has given the liberty, the industry and the organization there to choose your best practices, because 27,001 may be good for a large organization, and for, let's say, Haldiram, it's not good for. So pharmaceutical has a different kind of security issues there. So they can choose the best security practices in their applicable to them and elsewhere in the world, get it notified by the government, and there is no problem in getting notification. They can choose their own policy, implement it, put it on the web, and they implement it. Auditor has done there. There are 56 auditor in panel, and more auditors get in panel every year. Yeah. So there is a standard, there is a policy, state government has adopted. State government have their own policy, cybersecurity policy also. But the mandate of the central government is that the contours of your policy should meet 1, 2, 3, 4 criteria. And that is criteria is the international criteria, because we have adopted the international standard, and that's a part of the international best practice. That's one. So I would say the state government have adopted the policy, state governments have the cybersecurity policy, and they are implementing it. That's one aspect thing which I must say that. And I think it addresses your question, but as I said, the policy will have to be transformed, changed, looking to the technological trend and the innovations and the incidents which are also becoming more and more complex. The Amrita, what was the second question?
Cybersecurity and the challenges of cybersecurity and its impact. What are the disadvantages or advantages of Digital India initiative?
No, I mean, no question of disadvantage.
Exactly.
There is a program, it's a Digital India program. Government is now trying to create and put the digital kind of a technology, every application there. If you look at the statement of the Honorable Prime Minister, the Minister and other concerned department there, they say that we'll be achieving a $1 trillion kind of digital economy. Now that economy you can create only, generate, provided you have a Digital India. And if you are able to listen, talk to today sitting at different locations, it's because the Digital India, that program. Digital India doesn't mean that every application needs to be created by the government there. Digital India means the government has to encourage the digital environment there, where everyone can talk, everyone can do. Most of us could survive in the pandemic. Not many of us were not even COVID also, but we depended upon the medicine, we depended on placement of order, we got the salaries, we spent the money. Communication, because the Digital India program, we could see the Aadhaar, we could see the income tax, we could pay the things, we could buy the tickets, railway ticket, we could buy the air tickets there, check in, book luggage, all kind of things which we are able to do. because this was the Digital India program. The government emphasized that it's a program that you must digitize your system, use technology, adopt technology into day-to-day work. That is the Digital India program. The government has given incentive, government has made the budget available to them, and wherever possible, they have developed the application and left to them. All state data centers have been set up, large clouds have come over there. This is all the part of the Digital India program. I thought you will say it is slow. We need to do more. I can agree with that. I mean, I can agree. But saying bad, no, I certainly very strongly say that it's a absolutely good program. And I think it's our duty that we should strengthen. Digital India program will survive not because of the government. It's the onus is on each one of us. As I said, we are in a heterogeneous environment. We need to secure the environment. We can interact, we can strengthen Digital India program, provided each one of us also should play our role sincerely and seriously, securing the system, securing the media, and interacting in a secure manner, facilitating a secure environment where we are able to transact or access internet, do our application in a conveniently and secure manner.
Thank you so much, sir. Sheetal, if you can quickly come in and make your last comments, 3 minutes.
Sure, thank you so much. There were a couple of questions in the chat, so I didn't get to them before. I'll just cover them now. I think one of them was about cyber surveillance technology. And that's one of the areas that, of course, intersects with human rights. It's an example of how human rights are affected by the cyber ecosystem, and why it's so important to have strong regulation that's rights respecting in place. It's really important to have transparency and accountability for the actions of governments that buy spyware. And as we know, the regulation around espionage and what's acceptable for states to do is really gray. But what is unacceptable and what is accepted by states is that spying on human rights defenders and undermining human rights law through the use of spyware, that is unacceptable. So that's a red line. And I think that the recent revelations have shown that there is a growing consensus and a move towards ensuring that spyware is not used against human rights defenders, journalists, dissidents, etc. The US recently put NSO Group, which is a company that sells this type of spyware to governments for that end, on a blacklist. It's important that other governments do that, but more importantly, we need to upgrade our international legal framework so that this type of software cannot be traded to be used against human rights defenders. So we have a long way to go. There's some promising kind of movements in that regard, but there's still so little transparency and accountability for the use of this type of what we call spyware. And it's essentially a type of software. And it's really, really important that those efforts are upgraded.
So Sheetal, since we are out of time, any last moment words, etc., you would want to add, comments or anything?
Well, I think it's really important to say that as we become more dependent on a digital environment, as has already been discussed, the security of our systems, the security of our data is really key. And that's why it's so important to engage all stakeholders in the development of the policies and the regulation to address the challenges that we're facing. It's important to have a rights respecting approach. And that's if you're interested in what that means or digging into that in more depth, I'd be happy to share more information. I'm going to put the website of GPD in the chat so you can check that out. But it really requires the engagement of everyone, including all of yourselves in these discussions, because you all have a stake in a strong and secure internet. So do get involved, and believe me, the work, there's not going to be any shortage of work to do in this space. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Sheetal and Sir, for spending 1 hour on a weekend and speaking to the fellows. There may be some questions. We may email it to you, just in case you could share some links, etc. We will share it back. But thank you so much.